for me, leaders that focus on cultivating and building trust within their teams and organizations are the best leaders I've ever worked for. And it's so multidimensional, so it's a little bit of a broad answer, but it comes back to self-awareness, and it comes back to a focus on trusting yourself in order to build and facilitate greater trust with others is the number one quality. I think if every leader focused there, the world would be a better place.
Welcome to the Unleashing Leaders podcast, where we work with willing leaders to accelerate the changes you seek. We'll learn from the experiences of different leaders facing real challenges and distill practical, purposeful steps to apply in your context. I'm Lee Scott, your curious co-pilot. Together, let's make positive changes for our companies and communities. Welcome back to the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Today, we are joined by our guest, Stacie Baird. She is the Chief People Officer of the Community Medical Service team based in the greater Phoenix area. She's going to be telling us more about the incredible mission-driven purpose of her organization, as well as her backstory. But today we're going to be looking at an interesting paradox, or maybe an interesting combination. How do we as leaders cultivate for ourselves and those around us a greater level of self-care and compassion so we can have the energy to be our authentic selves? And how do we leverage the rise of AI to complement, elevate, and extend the human experience, as opposed to have it be the end of that which we know as humanity? Stacie, the juxtaposition is fabulous. I'm super curious about it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lee. I'm excited to have an opportunity to share what I'm learning, and I'm sure, hear what you're learning about what feel like opposing forces, but my belief is they're really symbiotic. So yeah, excited to get into having a deeper level conversation.
Fantastic. And also, I don't want to forget to mention this, but you are the host of the HX podcast. So having a fellow podcaster on the show is always a delight. And so we'll definitely be sharing with folks more about where they can find you at the end of the show as well, too. But good to have somebody who's all things human experience. Well, let's start with where you are now. Tell us a little about the organization, which you get to treat as your leadership playground. What are you guys up to? What are you doing? So our listeners can have some context about who your customers are.
Yes, Daryl, we are in the space of fighting the opioid epidemic and saving lives. Our rally cry is our cause, is our calling. In community medical services, we provide a full array of treatment to those struggling with opioid and substance use disorder. We have over 70 locations across 15 states, and we are growing. So an unfortunate pattern in this organization is over 200 people a day die from this epidemic. So we are continuing to grow to touch more communities and more lives every single day. We're going to be opening 4 more sites between now and the end of 2024, more to come in 2025. So we're in growth mode. Our sites, it's a very unique culture because we are mental health and opioid and substance use, and about 50% of our employee population are in recovery themselves. So that makes a very unique opportunity for myself and what we call our employee experience team lead, which is really curating and cultivating the human and employee experience for those people inside of our organization. Because 50% of our folks or more, I believe it's greater than that, are in recovery because we are a very trauma-informed, harm reduction-oriented agency. So we do lots of things.
So having those lived experiences is so key.
So key. Yeah, and just so many beautiful souls coming together to really solve for the problem. And a really innovative company. We were the first company to ever open a 24-hour intake center in the space. We're the first company to do a lot of the things that we do. So really risk open to do what's right for patients. We have an expert, one of our medical directors is an expert in treating women who are pregnant, who are struggling with opioid addiction. So, we get into those gray areas that some are really afraid to go into. And what comes out of that is, as the chief people officer, or whatever the heck you want to call me, that the head of the people, the human stuff, my team and I have a unique opportunity to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is how do we help our people be their best selves for when their patients walk through the door. And I don't take that lightly. I take that with a lot. Since I took this position 2.5 years ago, I take that very seriously and continuing to further my own education. I'm now a trauma-informed and resilience coach via Trauma Institute. I wanted to do that to become more informed as a chief people officer of a trauma-informed agency, for example. So just a continuous learning journey for me on how I can show up as my best self. And we'll get a little bit into my story, I'm sure my personal story of what happened about it now going on almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago for myself. That was an aha moment that accelerated my desire to have that learning as well. So yeah, just a really unique opportunity to work right on the front lines of something that is affecting so many people right now.
Well, right there, something I want to highlight is so often in life we face challenges, adversity. You and I talked about some that we're both facing in our personal lives. And we hate those and we're like, this sucks. And I want to get out of this as fast as possible. But what you just shared there is like, the strength of your organization and over 50% of your folks is the fact that they have gone through those adversities, and that those challenges become then our source of our superpowers and our ability to then serve others in that way, or have an expanded frame of reference. I think it's just important to remember that adversity is the source of your strength. I mean, look at all the superheroes that are out there, right? Something happened, bad, challenging, and then that is why they're now the hero of Gotham or whatever. So really, really want to just honor all of us going through challenges right now, that this too shall pass, and it will become a source of a way that you can serve, in the future. But it doesn't make the moment any better when you're dealing with it, right?
100%. And if you'll allow me, one thing I learned about resilience that I think was a little bit of a doing this work that I'll share with everyone is, for a long time, I had a belief system like resilience was about bouncing back, and it was some sort of elastic band. It is a journey. It's a story. It's a long-term game. It is 1%. If you've read Atomic Habits, it's 1% every day. It is having tools and structure to build resilience. It's not magic. And what we learn in this coaching through the Trauma Institute is those things are all really missed. It's not a light switch, right? It's not like I'm great, trauma happens, I shut the light off, and resilience is I'm turning the light switch back on.
Turning it back on. Yeah. No, it's not binary. You're going through it, right? It's not a cave. You don't go in a dark cave and then you come out of the cave. You're not bouncing back. You're moving it's a tunnel. I went through this thing and I'm coming out the other side and I gained something, right? Even if it feels like I lost something, which probably did, but you also gained something. And that's, I think that's a different way of looking at resilience in general. Wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit more about, if I was a little girl and I want to grow up to be Stacie as the people lead of this incredible mission-driven program to literally save lives. Some people say look, it's just work. It's not life or death. And you're like, hoorah, hell yeah, this is about life and death. Tell us a little about the journey that got you here, and then share also, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about your personal experiences that was in parallel with the professional journey. But let's start with the professional.
Yeah. So I started on my journey because I wanted to be a doctor. So when I was about 17, I got a job in a hospital, a nonprofit hospital system in Indianapolis called St. Vincent's. And I had just the best group of physicians. I started in the file room and, I was young and I just wanted to get experience in that particular practice, had the 2 heads of residency. So I was able to do rounds with them and really learn what it was actually like to be a doctor. What a gift. As you can tell, Lee, I didn't become a doctor. So here's the story, right?
I couldn't know that.
So I was in undergrad in pre-med and just managed care, was consuming healthcare. And my doctors were like, don't do this. So they all said, don't do this. One of my female physicians, and again, this is back in the 90s. So God bless the evolution. We're not where we want to be, but God bless the equality that's continued to progress over the last 25 years of my life. It was true back then. being a female physician meant a choice between a family and being a doctor. And that was the advice she gave me as well, which I think was really good advice. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have a family. And that wasn't completely feasible back then. So through all that advice, Lee, I was like, okay, what the heck am I going to do? Well, let me finish my degree. So my degree is in chemistry and pharmacokinetics. But at the same time, I kept moving up at the hospital. I became the head of residency recruiting, which was really cool. Again, an opportunity to learn about this practice, finding the best talent that is really aligned to the mission, vision, value of our hospital at the time, which again was a Sisters of Mercy nonprofit hospital. So flash forward, graduated, moved to Arizona. This is where my mom lives. So again, a little bit about my personal story. I wasn't raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandparents in Indiana, but every year went to 3 states and lived with different people, which to our point earlier felt like a very heavy burden to bear. And now I recognize what a gift to be in 3 completely different cultures.
Microcultures,
yes.
Different family settings, different, styles, different communication, like all that expose you to the range, or at least a broader range, right, of humanity.
Yeah. And I think you had a kind of a similar, right, kind of background. And so that just creates, I think, a curiosity and a desire and a hunger to just really understand people, because that's survival when you're a child, in some ways. So I always loved Arizona.
I gotta get these different people. I got to know different roles of engagement. So I get fed and I get shelter and maybe I get a hug along the way.
Absolutely. And running wild and free in Gainesville, Georgia was not the same as being in Phoenix, Arizona, where my mom still was, or being back in Indiana. Very different cultures, very different families. And so I moved back to Arizona. I had my heart. I moved here when I was 2 and moved back to Indiana when I was 8, but I always came here every year. So watching this city grow and develop has just been such a passion for me. I love the desert. I love the mountains and I love the ocean too, but I love the desert. So came out here and I was like, what the heck am I going to do? I'm going to go into recruiting because that's the only thing I know what to do, right? Let me start there. And long story short, it was just been a series and a progression of one of my clients when I was a recruiter in 1999 said, hey, girl, do you want to come and be our HR team? I was like, what the hell what is that? Because he was building a startup out of Sunnyvale, California. I said, I don't know how to do any of that. I just know how to recruit people. He's like, great. That's the only thing we really care about right now is recruiting
right
people.
Now, that's what's relevant. So yeah,
that's you can learn the rest.
And you'll learn the rest as you go, right? Just jump in. Yeah,
that's right. And so that's what I went from agency into back in 99 to being, right into the fire of a head of people of a high growth company in Silicon Valley, of a growing company. Built that company, sold it to Hewlett Packard. I didn't have equity. I had very minor equity. It wasn't like a major seminal event in my life, but it was a very big learning experience for me. We were right down the street from Yahoo Networks. We were right down the street with some of the big players. I was competing for talent with some of the biggest players in the country. So that was a really big opportunity. And then the market went down and I went to a Fortune 50 company, which I thought, again, what experience haven't I had? I haven't been in a big company. Let me go do that. And then just from there, after that, just went back into high growth companies. I love the piece and the build and the being able to curate the human experience is what I learned like right out of the gate as early as possible with an organization and build a really incredible employee experience team that is people focused, data centric, what is doing things. And we're going to talk about AI, like looking at technology as a lever. And so that's where I found my sweet spot in my career. Now I've done that, 10 or 11 times. And so when I got this call for a few times, couple
times. But it's fast. I mean, even at this point, right, what seemed like a jagged, broken road looking back was really a straight arrow to where you are now. It was like you were assembling all of these experiences and these abilities, and your curiosity drove you through it. That definitely stands out. Your ability to extract the wisdom out of every experience that you're in, again, whether it's in, South Georgia or the high desert or central, US, and then Silicon Valley, fast-paced, high-tech versus a hospital environment. These all seem completely disjointed. They all seem completely like, what do you have? ADD? What's your problem, kid? Right? But really they were all shaping you to be able to see what was common across the human experience. And then how do you accelerate the curation of that in an intentional, purposeful way, regardless of what the specific product is? But then, oh, wow, look at how data and tech, are, like you said, not polar opposites, but are actually potentially, done right, complementary. So already you see this form of Stacie ready to come out in the world. And now you've done it 11 times. Now you've got the repetition in. So you're like, man, I can spot those patterns from a mile away. Right. But then life threw you a curve. You had it all together. You're, full throttle, high intensity, fitness instructor, superwoman. And then life happens. So tell us a little about that journey.
Yeah. And I'll say this to your point, like I'm big into Reid Hoffman's book around, everything's a tour of duty. So I will say I did a stint as CEO running a turnaround of a startup, which was so incredible, right, to run. And I taught myself graphic design and did all this stuff at that company. And then I also was a management consultant for 2 years at a management consulting company that was actually funded by Jack Welch. And so you, to your point, like I started to view my career as a portfolio. And I've started to talk to a lot of people, a lot of Gen Xers about this, like reducing the shame that your career is a portfolio and you're curating it as you go. And it all culminates into, right, kind of not even one big event, but it just continues to accumulate wisdom, hopefully along the way, and curiosity. So yeah, I took the job at CMS. I always tell this story. It was a really interesting experience because when I came onto the market was hot for HR people right after COVID. And I got 5 offers in 2 weeks. And my husband and I sat down, and he's an executive, God bless his soul. He's a chief revenue officer. And he whiteboards everything. So we whiteboarded all my offers out. And
a finance and a people person, that is a power couple, if I heard one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's actually right in sales and revenue driving, but he's like a process builder as well. And so he was like, this one, babe, like this one was pretty easy. It's, and so CMS was on the opposite side, hard, risk, big stuff, right? Big, heavy stuff. And I was like, come on. I'm like, do you know me, babe? Like, am I gonna? No.
It's like, it's way right. It's like, no, these, you know which one I'm going after.
Yeah. He's like, I know. He's like, I knew it is before I ever wrote this on the board, but I just the extra. So I chose that. And, I had someone in my life that was affected by opioid use disorder. This is very personal for me. As everybody at CMS has, most of us are here for a reason. So flash forward a little less than a year, January of 2023, I took my 18-year-old, 17-year-old at the time daughter to the pediatrician. And within a 24-hour period, we were given her diagnosis of a very rare form of leukemia and was on chemotherapy and in the hospital. And I've had moments in my life that are very obviously pivotal moments. As a parent, as you know, there is nothing, the birth of your children is obviously a pivotal moment. This was definitely a life-changing moment that I can't even explain. Interestingly enough, people ask me, how did you respond? I have been doing the work that we're going to talk about today around self-regulation, self-compassion. Now, because I took the job at CMS, I took it very seriously to understand how do we teach our leaders to be their best self. So I'd started down this road of looking at how to self-regulate, have greater self-compassion, have greater boundary. Now, my aha was I was in the crawling mode of that journey when this all happened. Then after 25 years of HR, teaching fitness and well-being, launching well-being programs, being a mom now to 5 kids, being a partner in a way, I really wasn't really great at it myself. I was not always practicing what I was preaching. I was good at physical activity and food and some of the stuff, but not great at the stuff that really helped
Yeah,
me.
the inner work, rather the inner work. So let me just pause there for a second, Stacie, because I want other leaders to know this, right, about it. It's like you're driving, you're checking the boxes, you're doing the right things, you're assembling the affinity rings to, be able to, do the thing that you're born to do. And then there's that realization that there's one piece of it that really integrates all together that's been missing. And in that moment, that's not a moment to beat yourself up for. It's actually, it might be humbling. It might take you to your knees. It might be because life has thrown it at you. But that's the moment of greatest growth and evolution when you're like, ooh, I was missing this. Okay, now it's really time. And then when you embrace that and you do something about it, suddenly everything levels up. Right. But in that dark moment, I think a lot of us really, whether it's a circumstance or necessity or, pandemic or economic or a child, like whenever that thing hits, as bad as it feels in the moment, that is the moment of revelation that allows you to level up. So almost, and you've probably gone through this now in micro ways several times in your life, but being able to recognize that and be like, okay, as much as this is going to suck, this is also a moment of growth and empowerment. So I just want to honor that for you, because I think people are like, well, I just want to be Stacie without all the heartache. And it's like, well, you don't get to be Stacie without the heartache. Like that is what makes Stacie authentic and powerful. Anyways, please, I didn't mean to interrupt you in the story.
No, you're good. So, people always ask me, like, what was my response? My daughter doesn't even remember the moment. My husband was there. I think I was so grateful because I had to be calm for her. And so I do meditate. I do work in that area. And so very grateful that I had started that work, because in that moment, I was at peace with an outcome that was unknown. And, there was tears and fear and pain and all the emotions. And we slept on a teeny tiny little couch, and my husband had to hold on to me, in the all night. He didn't sleep at all, to hold on to me all night long, just, waking up and crying. It was a lot of pain. She was not, we could have lost her, in that first week. And although I got her to pediatrician with her 4 times in 4 weeks prior, they didn't catch it. And until that leukemia spilled out of her bone marrow and into her blood system, you couldn't find it. She had actually been in the hospital 4 weeks prior to that due to her flu, but they didn't find it. So, it's a very aggressive form of leukemia. She was on chemotherapy within 12 hours. We're told it was a 3-year chemotherapy journey initially. So you're just thinking, how am I going to do this? I have 3 years ahead of me of 5-day-a-week chemotherapy with this child. She had her cord put in her chest within 12 hours. She was just not processing anything at that point. She doesn't remember really the first 2 weeks in the hospital, which I say over and over and over again is a true gift, that she didn't remember any of that.
And black that one out. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember all of it. And my husband interceded, like I was trying to sleep in the hospital, just so many things where you're just like, babe, like you need to come home and sleep. You're not going to do this. You're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah,
right?
You can't do this for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Like that, the gift that you have to be intense and to accelerate and to go full throttle, right? There's a time and a place for that. There's also, you need to rejuvenate, and that's that self-regulation and that self-care.
Yeah. So here was what was so incredible. I had this pattern every day where I woke up. I always get up at about 5 o'clock in the morning to work out. And before this all happened, I started doing Freedom Fridays on Fridays, which is what I post on LinkedIn, which I had a town hall every Friday at 9 o'clock that I recognized pretty early on at CMS, that to show up with my best energy at 9 o'clock in the morning for the entire company. I'm like the MC of the call. In order to do that, I had to ask myself every Friday morning, like, what do I need today to show up great at 9? So most of the time it's going for a hike in the desert. That's 90% of the time. And sometimes it's a slow taking pictures, meander, and sometimes it's a job. Like it depends on literally what do I need today. So I had started those reps, and that is really the baseline of self-compassion. That is the baseline of that neuroscience around self. I didn't realize it at the time. I just was doing.
Yeah. Let's anchor that for a second, because that's a key point there. It was asking yourself, what do I need to show up for this thing I want to do? Right. And that sounds like such a simple question, but we assume like, no, just go, just keep going. Don't pause, just go. Like, no, what do I need to fill my tank? And recognizing that might be different on different days. And for you, you found 2 or 3 or 4 things and were able to start to learn based on feedback. What was it that was going to best serve you so that you can be best of service? But it's a simple question, to ask, what do I really need right now? And your husband was asking that when you were in the hospital, right? You were asking yourself for these Freedom Fridays. I just want, we go through that and people are like, that's the moment. That's the thing. Do that thing. So then what comes next?
What comes next is I did that Freedom Friday and I did a video, and it was raw. I actually said to my husband, I don't know if I'm going to do a video today. And he's like, I think you should tell people what's going on. This is why you do what you do. And these are the moments when shit gets real hard, that this is important. And he said, so we talked about it. I didn't want it to feel manipulative or disingenuous or very social media. I just wanted to say, we're having a really tough time, but this is why I practice this for every Friday. Then I got the opportunity to practice it every day because I had a 45-minute drive to the hospital every day. And I'd get to a stoplight. I tell this story every Monday in our new employee orientation because I give it to people as an offering. You're a new employee at CMS. Every day you have to drive to work and you get out of your car and you have choices to make. And one of those choices I had to make every day is there was a stoplight in front of the hospital and I could turn left and go to the parking lot, or turn right and go into a Starbucks and take a deep breath and walk across with a coffee and a Frappuccino for my kid and take a moment. Or I could drive to the top of the parking garage slowly, listening to a vibe, and take a deep breath or look at the sunrise and top of the parking garage and take space there. I had choices to make. Everyone has choices to make. And I did it every day for 30 days without fail, 7 days a week, because that's what I had to do. And it was that question at that stoplight. So here's the 3-step process of self-compassion. This is Kristen Knapp and Chris Gerber's work on self-compassion. Number 1, pause. Like you said, pause at the stoplight, pause and say, I'm going to take a deep breath. Second is speak to yourself like you would someone you love. It's normal to feel this way. I just got off a conference call. I'm about to walk into this room. I am responsible for the energy I bring into her room today. And man, does she need me to be in a good place. Third question, what do I need right now? To your question, what do I need right now? And so that's the 3-step process. And it was that. And then after discharge, we had chemotherapy 5 days a week at clinic. We're actually going there today for her oncology follow-up. And I had anxiety on days like today where we're going back to that space. You're going into a space of where babies and children and parents are facing their hardest moment. And it is, you can feel everybody's stress in the elevator, in all of it, right? If you just feel it's palpable. And we're going for her oncology checkup. So we always get the thumbs up or thumbs down today. It's an anxiety producing day to day. She does blood work today. And she doesn't like needles at this point, as you can imagine.
Well, Stacie, to anchor it, I want folks to hear that moment. Could you say that again? It's just like, okay, when you're faced with that thing that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, right? How do you provide the self-compassion so you can self-regulate? There were 3 steps. Step 1 was.
So I'm going to give this real life example, Lee. You just got out of a tough meeting. Like, it's budget season, performance reviews. It's not even like cancer. It's just like,
no, it's just the life. Yeah. You got an evacuation notice. It's your, the fire is about to consume your 30-year tree. But what else could it be, right?
Let's take that example. Number one, pause and do something to regulate your presence. For some people, that's a box breath, 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts exhale, 4 counts hold. Some people, it's just a deep breath, one deep breath. Some of it is repeating gratitude. I'm grateful for my breath. I'm grateful. Anxiety and gratitude can't really be the same brain at the same time. So many options. And use AI. What are self-regulation techniques? It takes you 1 minute to do. Listen, it'll give you a lot of options. God bless that tool. And so then the next is say something to yourself that you would say if you were saying this to your 5-year-old self or your own child.
Or your best friend going through a really tough time, right? Yeah. Somebody you love, somebody that genuinely like, hey, I need to show up for you right now. Which is ironic because oftentimes what we do is we give ourselves the boot camp beat down, right? It's like, suck it up, soldier, get after it, come on, right? And you're like, I don't need that right now. There's a time and a place for that. I'm not knocking it, but I don't need that right now.
Yeah. This is
So speak with love.
Yeah. And so just simple, right? It takes a second, hey, that was rough. Anybody would feel stressed after that call. And what do I need right now? Before I get on this next call and carry that energy into the next one-on-one or whatever I have. Do I need to get up, take a walk? What do I need to do?
Yeah, of the choices and the options I have, of which are plentiful, even in the darkest moments, right? And one of those might be to curl up in the fetal position and cry, and that might be what I choose. Thank you very much. But of all those incredible options in front of me, what do I want to choose? And what I like about what you said is that I could tie it into the physiology. That deep breath oxygenates the brain, right? And provides focus. The loving conversation oxygenates the heart, right? So now that's open, is ready to do its job. And then what do I need? Empowers your hands. So you're really aligning the head, the heart, and the hands in that micro meditative moment so that you can then choose to engage in that next moment as powerfully as you possibly can, right? And like you said, it doesn't take a 2-week Buddhist retreat. It's making that space for yourself at the stoplight outside of the hospital where you're dealing with a devastating situation.
Yeah. And we've heard a lot about self-care, which I think is beautiful, but a pedicure does not cure everything. It can help, but you can't do that in 2 minutes between a meeting. Yeah. It's you got 2 minutes. So I believe scheduling time for that is critical. That's a totally different conversation. This is really about re-regulation and co-regulation. Let me say this, Lee. You're in the middle of a tough situation. Sometimes we beat ourselves up because self-regulation isn't working. We can't read ourselves into calm. Co-regulation is powerful for a reason. We are built to be connected. Reach to your people who are good at bringing the calm back. My husband is like he is the namaste of namaste in that way for me. And God bless his soul. Like, I hope I'm not for him, but he is the person that helps me really ground. And so know who that is. And if you're struggling, because sometimes we beat ourselves up like, I'm reading, it's not working. I'm not. I hope
listeners are listening to this right now, laughing at themselves. And if you haven't already, think of somebody who needs this message and share this episode with them. Okay, like this is be a co-regulator in this moment.
Yes, exactly. And so there's no shame. There's no guilt in co-regulation. So, that's a piece of it. And that person can help guide you in really uncovering what you need. And sometimes if you're really lucky, you have people that are, a little bit somatically inclined, what we call our body presence. You already pointed this out, our heart, hand, and our hands. Sometimes you'll feel like, where am I feeling this? Like it's I feel like I've been punched in the stomach. Okay, well, there are very specific things to do for that self-regulation. So, as you practice these things, we have our leaders do this. We have them test different things in different moments and curate a list of 10 things that they have as a tool. There's upregulation and downregulation techniques. Again, use some AI, y'all, like put that into an AI, into one of your tools and say, give me 5 upregulation and 5 downregulation to try. And just try one a day, or again, 1% better. That's how we start to get better and build our habit and our toolkit, because and have it present. Like Atomic Habits, James Clear says this all the time, right? It is having that list front and center. So when you have that moment, it's a reminder, right? He talks about, I want to read more. So I buy books and put them around my house, and I have Audible on the front page of my phone. And it is presence that creates awareness, because when your amygdala gets hijacked in a trauma and stress situation, it is the tool that saves you, not your like own ability to turn that on, right? That's almost impossible for people to do unless you're the Dalai Lama, let's be honest. And I have a feeling everyone, even he has moments, right? So that's the what we teach. I teach this every dual Holy orientation to every single person. I ask them to send me an example in the next week, as and sometimes I don't want to call it the power of being a chief people officer. People take you seriously a little bit. So I do say, like, guys, I want you to take this seriously. This is your first day here. And if you don't do this, you will not be here a year from now.
Well, I think the difference is, are you running on a battery, or are you plugged in to like a nuclear power reactor that is unlimited practically, right? Because if you're running on the battery, I don't care how great your battery is, you will run out. But if you're plugged in and you've got these other external sources of energy or tools, and again, teach their own. I'm not saying, I'm not judging which one's right, but have them for you and have them accessible for you, so that they're at the ready. And that's just being smart about your own self-regulation and your co-regulation. Well, Stacie, you shared some really valuable tips that I think we could all use at work, at home, in our lives, in our relationships. You were teasing us a little bit earlier, and you mentioned it a couple of times. How do we leverage things like the rise of AI at an individual level, maybe even at a social level? You've gotten to be an expert, or you're becoming an expert in this. I think we're all, this is all so new. Nobody's really, right. But you're further down the rabbit hole than most of us. Frame for us, first of all, what are people's kind of first assumptions when they're thinking about AI as it relates to the human experience? And then, as you're mentioning, like, how do we reframe that to look at how it can be elevating the human experience? Would you be willing to share a little bit of that with our listeners?
Yeah, 100%. We've been doing a series on the HX podcast on this because I was at several CHR conferences, and I kept hearing the same response, which was fear. Like, I'm afraid. I'm hearing this really exacerbates bias. And that's scary. And I don't want to be wrong. And I don't want to try something and have it fail. I don't want the finger pointed at me. That's what I was hearing a lot of, without people saying that. And so I started having some experts on that have been doing this work. By the way, it's been around for a long time, y'all. This is not new.
Well, I took an AI class in like 97, I think it was, right? It's like, that was part of my leadership curriculum. It was like, this is coming. It just took a little longer than I thought it would, but like you said, this been around for a long time. I mean, 70s and 80s, we were talking about this.
Yeah. And so it's first and foremost is normalizing it. And I say this every time I speak, like, you use it whether you know it or not. If you use Spotify or Amazon or any consumer-based tool, there is an element of augmented intelligence that is being leveraged. Social media, my friends, is all based on AI algorithm and smart learning. So the question is, how do we use this, or we just keep it simple, for good versus evil, right? To forward the human experience. And I really, Jensen Harris is coming on the HX podcast as one of the experts. He spent 10 years at Microsoft, was really early in this stuff, built Testio, which is one of the very first AI-based tools in the HR space. And I was excited to have him because he's an OG, right, genuinely doing development in this space. And I was grateful to hear his advice list, what similar advice to what I've been giving. First of all, we teach our leaders how to get comfortable with it by giving them assignments like, hey guys, well, you curating your 10 list, again, that's what AI is good at, like pulling from the internet all different options and curating a list for you. I'm teaching people to write powerful prompts. And so we do learning labs with our leaders. Those learning labs are workshops. It's monthly. And then 2 weeks later, we do an accountability follow-up and say, how is it working? What's working? What's not working? They're 15 minutes long, they're bite-sized pieces, and we give it to people right where they need it. And we started with that option of please provide 5 videos, for example, that would help me down-regulate in 2 minutes or less. Boom. Like you get that.
Yeah. Well, and people, I think for a lot of folks, they're like, okay, well, isn't that just search? And I'm like, no, the difference between search and AI is search is just like, what's out there. Now I got to go evaluate it, assemble it, repackage it. AI is answer. It searches, it compiles, it evaluates, and then it presents. So it's answering, right? Not just searching. And that's a whole other level. And it would take you hours to go through all of that to find those nuggets. And again, it's still presenting them as options. It's not like you're not like, that's it. You have to take it or leave it. It's like you can then ask follow-up prompts to say, well, that wasn't quite what I was looking for. Give me something more in this vein and send it back out and have it give you another answer. So it's really an answer engine versus a search engine is the way I kind of characterize it.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to frame it. And I think the second step, let's talk about people in the HR space, right? You write a lot of policy, and I don't know that anybody, if it's the favorite part of your job, God bless your sweet soul, as it is not anybody I know's favorite part. And I have somebody who's really good at it. So it starts with teaching people how to write powerful prompts, which there's a lot of master classes out there, but you can't throw a rock without hitting one of them. So just dip your toe. Like, what's a project you have in front of you that feels really overwhelming and you don't know where to start? It can give you a starting point. And I think that's where we can leverage this to elevate the human experience, because I want my team, we focused on engaging with humans and not doing manual work and drafting policy for the next week. Would I rather have my head of our coaching team in coaching people? 100%. So I want him leveraging AI and then jumping on calls and putting it into action. So that's where I think this is an opportunity. And Jensen said it beautifully yesterday, like, yes, you have to have ethics around the use of this technology 100%. Yes, do we need to have awareness around vulnerable populations like our population, our patient population? We take this very seriously around bias and really being very cautious about how this is applied. One thing I heard the head of AI for Glassdoor say, which I thought, not head of AI, she's the head of DE&I, who was working in this space right now. It's not a half in, half out job, and you can't undo it. Once you go down this road, people will learn how to use this tool. And by the way, your employees are doing it anyway. If you don't have a policy, guidance, and ethics and boundaries, please get on that quickly, because it's being leveraged and utilized anyway. So please have awareness. Number 2, have, Microsoft calls it a red team. Some of the tech stack companies are calling it, lots of different things. But if you are going to leverage AI tools inside of your organization in a more meaningful and high impact way, be prepared for the investment to make sure that there's an ethical use of AI for your use case. And this is why Brene Brown got on stage at a recent massive national conference and said, HR, this is your opportunity. And I believe that. This is your opportunity to be the humanist at the table, to say this is how it impacts people. This is good or this is worrisome, depending on what it is, and help to draft the guidance early and also be highly engaged as the person that is the most human-centric view at a table of people. And CEOs, God bless their soul, they want, more revenue, more drive. Everyone has a role to play at that table. And I believe our role is to be the humanist and be rational, but also that requires us to be educated and informed. And so that's the call to action. Get educated, get informed, start to use it for, these very basic ways to get comfortable, lead by example, and teach your team those same things. And you will have a more productive and efficient team by leveraging this toolkit. I don't think jobs will be replaced by AI. And I heard this somewhere, and I wish I could give credit where I heard it because it's amazing. But people that leverage AI will replace people who don't. That is what I believe. And so I think it's not fear, it's lean in, not run away. That's my charge for everyone listening, is to to also be curious and appropriately skeptical when it feels misaligned. It's not appropriate in every
If
use.
it's not aligning with those values, you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? And again, having a red team or a counterpart that helps, question those motives, because you can get so focused on one outcome, you start to sub-optimize another one. But I love, Stacie, how you've been like, well, how do I start using it? It's like, well, start using it for yourself, right? Use it as a way to prompt you with the tools that you need. Like, what are things that, somebody in this situation could benefit from in 2 minutes if they were facing this? And it's like, well, here you go. Here are some options. And I think, to your point, yeah, it's not going to replace jobs as much as people who know how to use it replace people who aren't using it, and it's a way to extend and elevate. And especially those parts of you that really do take you away from the human experience. I mean, being huddled down on a keyboard, trying to hack out, a process map or a policy document, or, balance some, optimize some financial spreadsheet. You're like, man, let it do that. You use it then to go take and have a conversation, to inform decision-making, to have a greater impact, to increase interactions with your stakeholders or your customers, your teammates. That is a liberating and an elevating and an unleashing way of looking at AI versus it being, now these are the chains that are going to bind us and we're all going to be connected to a machine, right? So very humanistic. And I appreciate you, highlighting the role of those people in your organization that can be your balance to potentially rogue applications of it. Well, Stacie, where can people, you have just teased the heck out of us today. Where can people find out more about you, go deeper on these topics with you? Clearly, you're a relevant, compassionate, resilient human being. I know I want to continue to learn more from you. Where can people find that out?
Yeah, my main vehicle continues to be LinkedIn. I've been on that bad boy for since 05. So it's a platform I believe in. I believe in spreading positivity there. So that's where I do that work. The HX podcast is syndicated across all channels, much like you are. And so you can find us anywhere, just at the HX podcast, anywhere you find your podcast. And then I do things on LinkedIn like, hey, listen, y'all, going through menopause. I have a group specifically educating women on the science around what's happening in that space. That is a personal passion due to self-preservation right now. So
as most things that are motivated are.
Yes, I share what I learn and hope it's helpful for others. Similarly, we do this article series on LinkedIn. We're about to publish a couple more, the HX of AI, just what we're learning around that space and what we're applying. And then I am on Insta. That is more of, if you really care to learn about me personally, I'm an open book. And that is because, my daughter's journey continues on my journey into fitness and well-being for myself and my family. And whatever I'm learning in life, what I'm applying on a personal level, I think is important to share with people. And that's more of my personal journey. It's just HX Podcaster is my Instagram handle. So that's all the places I typically hang out when I'm not with my humans. And really try to share everything I'm learning, and hopefully people can take that with them and it's helpful for them as well.
Right on. Well, Stacie, thank you so much for sharing where folks can stay connected with you. Was there anything that you were really hoping to say on the show that I just failed to answer a good enough question to allow you to express it, or you feeling pretty empty cup at the moment?
I'm always, empty cup so I can fill it again, I guess. But I'm just grateful you and I got this time. You and I both have days today that, have our own levels of adversity. And I just hope for you, your family, and your life today that this was a break for you. It was for me. And that we both have just a beautiful rest of the day with lots of light and love and positive energy, and a knowing that this is all in our life for us. And here we are. So I hope we both take that away. I know I will. I hope you do as well.
I absolutely will. And I love that we're both fighting similar missions in different parts of the country. I see that we have very strongly aligned values. I think it's funny how both of us, are intensity in 10 cities, and we're also learning how to, slow down, reflect, recharge. So it has absolutely been therapeutic. Love what you're doing. Love how you're doing it. Love the relationship you have with your husband. That's so fantastic. It's an echo of the great relationship I have with my wife. And it's not lost on me that we're great when we surround ourselves with great people. So thank you for being part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss a moment that could be the key to your next breakthrough. Let's stay connected and contribute together by grabbing that @Unleashing Leaders handle on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite network. This is Lee Scott. Keep learning, loving, and leading. Our future and our communities are counting on us.